Paul, Cecil B. DeMille, we call him, has been doing this event for many, many years, and thank you so much. Well, last year at this time, I had the pleasure of announcing that our very good friend from the Laborers Union, Local 271, just recently had been appointed Executive Vice President of the Laborers International Union of North America. Well, I'm here to tell you that he no longer has that job. He's been kicked upstairs. Michael Sabatoni is now the General Secretary Treasurer of the Laborers International Union of North America. A lot of special things happening down there at the corner of South Main and Wickenden. Well, we have three honorees this evening receiving Lifetime Achievement Awards, including two organizations receiving Trailblazing Awards. I love these new awards that we have for the special things that some locals do up and beyond, and we get involved in that. Before we, I think you'll notice that Jim Parisi is not with us tonight. Jim Parisi is the hardworking president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society, and just got back from a vacation in Italy, and unfortunately is not feeling well. But I spoke to him just a couple of hours ago, and he's feeling great. He's looking forward to this event and how it all works out. And unfortunately, he went to Italy, and instead of bringing back a nice case of wine, he brought back a mild case of COVID. So I wonder, yeah, he told me it would be okay to tell that, all right? So I want you to know that. Okay. The Rhode Island Labor History Society is run by an all-volunteer board who meet maybe about 6-7 times a year and plan our activities. I'm going to quickly go through this list, and you're going to notice a little pattern here. James Parisi, President; Kim Weinman, Vice President; Danielle DeRico, Treasurer; Nadine Gregg, Co-Treasurer; Michael DeBico, Secretary; Adam McWellante; Catherine Collette, Past President; Pat Crowley, you noticing? Yeah, okay. Joey DeFrancesco, Vicki Gregg, Autumn Giat, Karen McInich, Ryan McIntyre, Scott Malloy, did I say Scott Malloyer? Scott Malloy, who invented this organization. Alvin Reyes, Miriam Ruman, myself, Jim Riley, Alexis Santoro, Linda Tioli, and Mary Murphy Walsh. Did you see the connection? These are all the cool kids in the labor movement. Now, if you want to be included in this cool kid group, I'm looking for 3 new members tonight. 3 new members. We have a great time. We have pizza. We have wine from Parisi's private vineyards. That's probably what he was doing out there. And we'd love to have 3 more members to come and join us. As always, we have a moment of silence for individuals who we lost since the last event. And I'm going to ask you for a moment of silence for those individuals. But before we get to that, I'm not sure how many of you know, but anybody heard of the name Velma Schlesler? A few of us old timers. But she has not the distinction, but she was the first woman ever killed on a picket line. And it happened in Cranston, Rhode Island, at the Institute of Mental Health, the IMH, where a scab drove the vehicle into a group of picketers, and unfortunately Velma was killed, and 2 others were very badly wounded, who spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. I think that she deserves to be recognized as well as these individuals. Ray Lane from the Steelworkers, Donald Milner from the Steelworkers, Ted Skripsack from the Firefighters and Laborers, Erwin Becker from the Newspaper Guild, Mary Pendergast, Warwick Teachers Union, Mary Jo Paulette, NEARI, Mary Ellen Goodwin, Senator and great friend of labor, and we lost our spiritual leader, very sadly, Father Ray Tatro, great friend of the AFL-CIO, great friend of the labor movement in Rhode Island, and a very strong advocate for the immigrant community and the underserved, has left us. And he was a great, great man. He was a very, very close friend of George Nees, and we'll miss him immensely. You may bow your heads. Thank you. Now we get on to our honorary presentees. Nadine Gregg is an employee of Citizens Bank, and that's good, because she is also the treasurer of the Rhode Island Labor History Society and longtime board member. She is responsible for managing our money, keeping her compliant with regulations, and helping with this event. She will be making the first presentation of the evening on behalf of former IBPO Local 13301 President and statewide director of the IBPOA, the International Brotherhood, IBPOA, International Brotherhood of Police Officers. Nadine, are you here? There you are. Yeah. Well, you do a great job for us. You do a great job.
That's my grandma down in front, in case anybody's wondering why that lady's taking so many pictures of me. It's not because she's a weirdo, she's my grandma. Good evening, everybody. It is a long-standing tradition of the Rhode Island Labor History Society to honor the greatest champions of labor. It is my honor to introduce one of those champions tonight, Mr. Anthony Tony Capezza. Tony has been a distinguished and honored public servant throughout his entire career. He served this country in the Army's Airborne Division during the war in Vietnam. Upon his return home and a quick and I'm sure thrilling stint in insurance sales, he fulfilled his lifelong dream of becoming a police officer, being sworn into the Cranston Police Department on February 26, 1973. As an officer, his dedication and commitment to service did not go unnoticed, and he was taken under the wing of Sergeant Tommy Lanzi. Within 3 years and Sergeant Lanzi's mentorship and guidance, Tony was convinced to run for treasurer of the International Brotherhood of Police Officers. And one lesson I learned is if you are convinced to run for treasurer, don't. But we did it, right? Under Tommy's tutelage, 3 years after becoming treasurer, Tony ran for president of the IBPO. Between the two positions, Tony served a total of 18 years advocating for his fellow officers. In addition to his tireless work for the union, Tony continued to serve as a police officer, retiring on January 6, 1996, as a sergeant detective. Retirement as an officer meant that Tony had time to accept a position as the national representative for the IBPO. He held this position until 2002, when he became the state director of the IBPO and the main lobbyist. Tony served in this capacity until February 28, 2021, when he retired. He continued his work advocating and lobbying until his retirement in March of this year. Even in his retirement, he continues to support his successor, John Rossi. When I spoke to him about his leisurely retirement, he had just come back from one fundraiser and was on his way to another fundraiser, I think, that night. Tony's career was full of so many accomplishments, with some of his proudest being getting legislation passed for officers to serve in towns in which they didn't reside, and support for tax relief in municipalities and legislation that would waive the property tax for the surviving spouse of an officer killed in the line of duty. Throughout his career, Tony built so many relationships and leaned on the support of other great champions of labor, including Mark Mancino, Frank Montanaro, Tommy Lanzi, and his close friend, Paul Valletta. Paul, you can't make him laugh while he's up here. I've been advised. Tony has so many accomplishments and accolades to be proud of over the last 50 years of service, or over 50 years of service. But when asked what his proudest accomplishment is, he cites his family. The job of an officer, detective, union organizer, and lobbyist meant late nights, long days, lots of travel, and he couldn't have done that without the support and love of his wife of 43 years, his 3 children, or his 3 grandchildren. I hope you'll be able to enjoy your retirement. Where are you? I hope you'll be able to enjoy your retirement soon, but until then, if everybody could please help me in congratulating Mr. Tony Capezza.
Thank you, Jim. Well, after that introduction, there's probably not anything left for me to say. And sometimes it's better to say nothing after something like that because it can only go downhill. But I'm going to be brief. First of all, I'd like to thank Jim Parisi and his board for bestowing this honor upon me. And it truly was a surprise when he contacted me a few months ago. And I'm greatly appreciative for it. I'd also like to congratulate the other recipients that are here tonight because they are also very well worth the honor. I look at tonight as not being about me, really. I look at it as being about everybody involved in the labor movement. You heard I've been involved, 50 years this year. I was hired in 1973, and at the time I became a member of IBPO Local 301. And I immediately was taken under the wing by most people in this room know the name Tom Lanzi. And Tommy guided me on the job. My success today, I trace back to all those years that Tommy guided me, not only in police work while he was on the job, but as in the union also. Tommy told me when to run for office, and I first became treasurer of the local 3 years after I was a member of the local, running against a much senior person. 3 years after that, I became president of the local. I served 6 terms, 18 years as president, and I was getting ready to retire, or thinking about retiring, so I stepped down. I then took a trustee position. But all that time I was on the job, and all the time that I was president of that local, I was guided by Tom Lanzi and others. Another person, and you will recognize his name, Frank Montanaro Sr. When Frank was president of the Firefighters Union in Cranston, I was president of the police union. And I went to Frank many times for his guidance because of his knowledge of labor. And I also had an executive board that I had two very experienced people on. They were older members of the department, and I learned a lot from them. And I listened to them a lot. And that was Paul Sakosha Sr., who his son then worked for me on the police department, and he worked for me in the union. I hired him in 2002 when he was retiring. And another gentleman by the name of Robert Noon. And these people guided me throughout my career on the police department and running the local in Cranston. And quite frankly, I probably would have fallen on my face without these people. Like I said, I only had 6 years on the job when I became president. And when I retired, our national then hired me immediately as a national representative of the IBPO. Now, besides being a member of the IBPO has a very special meaning to me. Seeing this is a labor history function, most people don't realize the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, which is a national police union today, actually started in the city of Cranston, the police department, in 1964, which happened to be the same year that the General Assembly passed the Police Arbitration Act, which gave police officers the right to organize. And the reason that the members at the time formed a union was because there were 7 police officers who were going to take a promotional exam, and they found out that answers to the exam had been given to certain members of the department, and they boycotted the test. Well, as a result of their boycott, they were terminated by the mayor. At that time, they had no protection. There was no union in existence. Like I said, the Arbitration Act had just passed. So they were left on their own to fight to get their jobs back. But the department, or most of the department, came together and gave them not only moral but financial support. And they fought the case through the Rhode Island judicial system all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court gave them their jobs back and their back pay and benefits. And the person that led that, fight was Tom Lanzing. And Tom was also elected their first president once they organized. And even after he retired, Tommy was a very close friend of mine. And even after he retired, I'd go to him for advice. As a matter of fact, when he passed on, he was actually a national rep with our organization, and I was hired not as a replacement, because nobody could ever replace Tommy, but to fill that position. And the rest was history. You know, and I did that since 2002. I retired, and while I was running that office, I had a very successful office. And again, not because of me, but because of my staff. I had a very competent staff. Ralph Azowski, Paul Sakosha Jr., our attorney, Gary Gentile, are all sitting at the tables over here, and John Rossi, who is replacing me up at the State House doing the lobbying. But all those years I lobbied from 2000 on, myself and Ralph Azowski, for a good many of those years, I had a very good close friend of mine, Paul Valletta, who was probably one of the most respected lobbyists in the state. Paul and myself couldn't be any closer than if we were blood brothers. And didn't matter that he was lobbying for firefighters and I was lobbying for police. We always went into hearings as one because most of the bills that we submitted affected both police and fire. And all these years, Paul helped me get through it because anybody that spent a lot of time up the State House can tell you, it gets crazy up there. And he kept me sane. In the last few years I was up there, he kept me out of trouble quite a bit. And Paul, thank you for that. And even though I'm retired, I'll still support the police officers and the firefighters in any way I can. I thought it was important that you hear that history about the IBPO only because you can see how a small union starting in a city in the state of Rhode Island could grow to be a national union. And I failed to mention, in 1970, what we did was, well, I shouldn't say we, I wasn't around yet, but at the time, police officers in Cranston, they started organizing other local departments, police departments, but they realized they had to affiliate with a national union. And their attorney at the time, Dave Sweeney, recommended the National Association of Government Employees out of Boston. And that's when really we went national with the help of NAGE, the union group. Today we represent police officers from the East Coast to the West Coast, which, again, I'm very proud of that it all started right in the city of Cranston. Before I close, I do have to mention my wife. And I have to mention that because, like I said, I was involved in unions for 50 years. And between the police department and my union activities, almost 95% of the work I did at night. I've got 3 kids. So I was out many a nights and my wife was home taking care of the kids. And I was away a lot because I had a lot of trips to DC, Florida for the board meetings and our conventions. So my success here tonight is really because of the backing I had of my wife also. So she deserves a lot of credit for it. In closing, I just want to say I love my entire Labor family that's in this room tonight, and it's hard walking away, but the way things have been going, I really haven't walked away, so I'll still be around. Thank you again.
Well, our dearly beloved president, Jimmy Parisi, may not be with us, but he wanted us to hear from him anyway. He just texted Adam Aquilante. He wanted to just let us know that he's feeling fine and that just a few remarks. Thank you, Adam.
Good evening, folks. Like I said, my name is Adam Aquilante. I'm an executive board member and a proud Council 94 member as well. And Jim, unfortunately, since Jim can't be here, he gave you some notes, and I'm going to talk about it with you this evening. I'm going to try to be brief. But first, I want to tell you who we are. And we are the last society dedicated to labor history in New England, where we are passionate about keeping the history of working class and unions alive. At this time last year, we honored 3 people for the Lifetime Achievement Award: Raul Figueroa, of Fusera Laboral, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, Nancy Idaluca of Unite, and Tim Melia of UFCW. We had our Trailblazer Award last year, Amy Mullen, and posthumously we awarded Ray Sullivan. We held our annual Labor Day address at Mashasik Cemetery, again, another name I always mispronounce, in Central Falls, and we had a good crowd to hear a great speech by Eric Loomis, and we had music that morning by Mary Lee Partington, who will also be doing it this year for us. We sponsored a terrific panel discussion of union organizing in the 1960s and 70s, put together by our very own Scott Malloy. Annually, we give a $500 donation to the Museum of Work and Culture in Woonsocket, so that the museum can be open free of charge to anyone who wants to visit on Labor Day weekend. We continue to give $100 checks to students who do labor-related topics at the Rhode Island History Day, which is a school competition and a national competition, and it takes place every April. And this year as well, we also distributed several cash awards. We've given out books and posters at various events this past year, including mailing every member of the Rhode Island Labor Historical Society a copy of What You Did Not Know About Rhode Island, authored by our very own Michael D'Amico. Would you please join me in thanking Mike for his creativity, his artwork, and his perseverance in getting this book published. Now, to date, we've distributed over 1,000 copies of this book. There's more downstairs if any of you have not gotten one. We also hosted an outing of the Newsies, the newspaper organizing that was hosted this spring at the Stadium Theater in Woonsocket. The annual Labor History Day address will be this year on Monday, September 4th at 10 o'clock at Mashasik Cemetery, where we will have Joe Walsh from IEBW 99 and music by Mary Lee Partington again. In addition to that donation at the Museum of Work and Culture, we want to let everyone know that day it is sold out, but there is a screening of another edition of Slatersville at 1:30, which is already sold out. Later on this fall, we plan a panel discussion to follow up on the organization of the 1960s and 70s, as well as a panel discussion on the textile industry. We have also embarked on a project to create short biographies of all our past honorees. Since 1987, we have honored over 150 individuals at our banquets. This project has taken longer than we hoped, but we are still hoping to publish a booklet of the first 50 or so and mail it out to our members. One of the last things is a special thank you to the IBEW, who host an annual charity motorcycle ride every year. This year we were honored to be one of the selected charities that IBEW raised money for. And I would like to thank Joe Walsh and the entire union leadership for raising over $9,000 for the Rhode Island Historical Society. And again, in closing, and I apologize if I took too much of your time, but as you can see, we have a lot going on in the Labor Society. Now, if you're not a member, you should consider joining us for a low price of $25 a year or $40 for 2 years, because you can see what we do on such a meager budget, and we thank you and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Scott Malloy. That just gets you excited just hearing those words. He is the reason why we exist. He started this wonderful organization some years ago, And just an interesting sidebar, he's going to be introducing someone. 35 years ago, at the first Rhode Island Labor History Society, at our first awards banquet, he inducted all of the members of that class. And now he's back here today to induct one more. Ann Conway, Director of the Museum of Working Culture. Come on up here, brother.
I hope Jimmy doesn't think that this is the last one. I mean, I got a few more years left in me. But anyway, our next honoree, Anne DeShane Conway, comes to us by way of Quebec, Canada, where her family was involved in the hospitality industry. And that's a good way to meet people, especially from Rhode Island, as we'll see. When the Woonsocket Museum of Work and Culture opened in 1997, both labor and management got together and donated money and supplies and artifacts to show off in the museum. And that combination, you don't see it very often, but labor and management continues even to this day. And Pat Crowley happens to be on the board of directors of the museum. So we know that they're open-minded to us, and that's a wonderful, great thing. But Anne, when she got to Rhode Island, was here for the birth, if you will, of that museum. And she started in a lowly position. You know, sometimes people don't like that, but a lot of room to climb. She ran the bookstore and the souvenir shop. Usually not the way to high office in Rhode Island government. But because of her perseverance and love of the subject matter that she was dealing with, she was named the director of the museum in 2013. And it was because of her intelligence and that beautiful accent that she has that you'll hear a little later. Although she's almost lost it now. She went to Rhode Island College. I think they beat it out of you, Anne, because that was a beautiful thing. But during her tenure, the museum came under the wing of the Rhode Island Historical Society, which we work with occasionally, and they've just celebrated 200 years of existence, which is absolutely amazing. For any of you who get to know Anne, during her tenure, she became more of an overseer rather than just the director of the museum. And she set up a preservation foundation so that into the future, the museum would have enough money and the wherewithal to keep it going for year after year. And Ian, I want you to know I put a $100 check in the mail just a few days ago. But that guy Trump put in charge of the mail, it doesn't go like it used to. But it's on its way. Ian is giving her unstinting support to the historic Independent Textile Union, which almost ran Woonsocket in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. She's embraced everything and anything that's French-Canadian, Quebec, and the French language. And she has built a gem-like structure. And we know that in this world of ours, there are very few shrines to organized labor, very few allies that we can reach out to, very few people who are willing to stand on a picket line or take any kind of a stand with ordinary working people, even though they may come from those roots. That museum, if you haven't been there, you owe it to yourself and your kids and your grandkids to go out and see a replica of a 1930s Union Hall, all sorts of labor and management displays, and a video in that Union Hall that shows the two founders of the modern labor movement in Rhode Island, Ann Burlack and Larry Spitz. And to see them up there on the screen still gives me goosebumps because I knew them both. And they were inducted into the Hall of Fame here as well. As Adam mentioned, the museum is open free of charge on Labor Day because of some money that we donate to that. And this year, even though it's already sold out, Christian de Resende's fantastic film on Slatersville, the first company town in America, will be shown. Ian, in many ways, and this I'll be summing up here, Ian, in many ways, has made that museum our summer home. It's a place you can go and relax and feel good about things. Let me end with a quotation. Someone interviewed an independent textile union member back in the 1930s, and this is what he said. French-Canadian women would go out at the drop of a hat. No group was as quick to walk out over an issue of working conditions. And Ian, thank you for keeping our memories alive. Ian Conway. A rose between two thorns.
I'll hold this for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
The proud husband.
Thank you so much, Scott. Who's better than Scott Malloy? Amazing. Thank you. And thank you, Rhode Island Labor History Society, for this amazing award, and congratulations also to the other recipients. I'd like to know, I'm always a little curious when I, look at a crowd like this. How many of you have been to the Museum of Working Culture before? Raise your hand. Yeah, we've got a good 50-50. Good, good. So as we mentioned, Labor Day open house on September 4th, so the rest of you can come and enjoy the place. So I have been at the Museum of Working Culture, as Scott mentioned, since we opened our doors in 1997. So more than 25 years ago, actually 26 years ago, next month, but who's counting? And I still love, and it's my favorite thing, to talk about to visitors of everywhere. We have people come in, international visitors, people from, Rhode Island, all over the United States. And I love to share the amazing story that the museum preserves and shares. But my favorite thing really is to talk with our little school children. It is so important for them to understand how labor has made a difference in their lives and in the lives of their families, from being able to enjoy a safe work environment to being able to even enjoy paid holidays and vacations and better salaries. It is not that long ago that in the mills of Woonsocket and Pawtucket and West Warwick, that you could lose an arm or your scalp because it got caught in a machine, and you were sent home to your 7 or 8 children with nothing, and then you were let go. So these stories are the stories that we don't want people to forget. That it's important. It's our recent history. It is also important to know that labor unions have helped immigrants. They have helped them by teaching, offering classes, history classes, offering English classes, offering citizenship classes, so they could get their U.S. citizenship and be able to vote and to have a voice. And those are the stories that we preserve at the Museum of Working Culture. The museum is a special place not only to our visitors, but to the people who are invested in our institution. And this evening with me, we have Dr. Morgan Graff, who is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Historical Society. And with her, we have a couple tables of Museum of Work and Culture Preservation Foundation boards and volunteers. One of them is sitting over there too, Patrick Crawley. And we have my number one volunteer here, my husband, Peter Conway, and my sons, Patrick and David. And please all stand up to be recognized. It is because of the dedication of our staff and volunteers that the museum has grown and continues to expand as we develop new programs and new exhibits. And speaking of new exhibits, on Labor Day, you've already heard a little bit about the sold-out Christian Derizenda's episode 6. We'll show it again, right, Christian? We are going to, yeah. But we have other things going on throughout the day. Actually, we're showing episode 5 in the morning. That's leading obviously to episode 6, and that is not sold out. And we have, but the best thing about the day, I think, besides what Christian is doing, because it's something that we have been working on for months and months. We are opening a new immersive multimedia exhibit. If you're familiar with the museum, it is located inside our farmhouse exhibit. It is pretty amazing, and all I'm going to say about it is that it is very, very cool. So please come to the museum on Monday, September 4th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., free of charge. Bring your friends and families. And again, thank you so much for, this amazing honor.
Thank you, and I will see you on Labor Day. Alvin Reyes is an active Rhode Island Labor History Society board member who works at the IBW at the Membership Development Coordinator. We appreciate Alvin's work making our events a success. Alvin will present the 3rd Lifetime Achievement Award. Alvin? Now, before he comes up, I just want to say a little something about the individual who's being awarded here, and hold your applause, because it's Andrew Costa. Now, Andrew Costa is the kind of a fellow who walks into a crowded room. Sorry? Oh. Andrew Cortez. Andrew Cortez. He's the kind of guy, when he walks into a crowded room, whoever is the smartest person in that room immediately becomes the 2nd smartest man in the room. Unless Bob Walsh was already there.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, brothers and sisters, distinguished honorees, for coming here tonight. I have the honor and the privilege to introduce Andrew Cortez, who has been instrumental in the changes of many, including myself. Andrew first started his career in California. He migrated here to Rhode Island to start a new life. A life that he didn't even know where it would take. He started off his career in the Carpenters Union, came here to Rhode Island, was offered many positions, and he stumbled upon a program called Youth Build, in which he became the director of, and out of luck, he actually was applying for a position in the Carpenters Union to become an instructor. But upon his position in the Youth Build, he noticed that there definitely needed to be a change. a change that, you know, not many leaders today take upon themselves to look beyond the future. Andrew was a very forward-thinking gentleman. You know, he saw that there needed to be a change in the environment. There needed to be a change in the community. There needed to be things that the status quo, that many don't take that challenge upon themselves to accomplish, you know. I wanted to quote one of the most controversial, well, not most, but one of the few controversial presidents we've had. And he said, progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. And that was Harry Truman. You know, he was at a time when things were very controversial. You know, the first president that, you know, was implemented during the NATO process, you know, a lot of things that happened during that time, which I wasn't born, but you know, it did create a lot of controversial things, you know, and you need to be that leader to think beyond yourself and think of things that may be able to help others. When Andrew came here to Rhode Island, working the youth build, and I might, you know, I feel ashamed of saying that, but knowing Andrew for more than, you know, close to 14 years, I knew little of him. Even graduating and being an alumni of Building Futures, we hardly ever heard anything about Andrew. Andrew never spoke about himself. He never said I. He never said, you know, I did this, or this is what I did or accomplished. He always thought about how can we make a difference? What needed to be done? I sat with Andrew about a week ago, just because I felt so ashamed that knowing him for 14 years, I didn't even know where he really came from. For all I knew, he just dropped off the sky. And so I said, let me take the initiative. A lot of us don't know much about him because he doesn't speak about himself. And I said, Andrew, you know, I'm dodging, you know, working my way around the questions. And I said, Andrew, what brought you here to Rhode Island? Why did you start Building Futures? Because out of the many accomplishments that he has had, including being on so many boards, being appointed by the governor to be on the National Apprenticeship Council, which is very big. You know, he sat on boards with the president. He said, you know, that's not a problem. You know, I'm not intimidated by any of those people. None of those. That doesn't mean anything to me now. You know, my main focus was coming from the West Coast and seeing and going through the things that I've gone through as a child. He went abroad and took some chances in Nepal with a mentor, saw the devastation in there. He said, I knew there needed to be change. I just didn't know how to accomplish that, but I knew there needed to be change. He came here with an initiative to make change. You know, the slogan, Building Futures, came from that director's position program that he called Youth Build. 300 plus, actually 400, he told me the other day, have graduated from that Building Futures program. That's 400 lives that have been changed, transformed from communities that were deprived of opportunities. Low-income communities, communities that have been plagued by violence, injustice, discrimination, lack of opportunity. He was able to witness that abroad and brought that here to Rhode Island. One of the first pioneers in apprenticeship. You know, history another quote by our president, Harry Truman. He said, actually, let me check. Yep, lost it. But I wanted to say that, Andrew is a very special individual. Very special to me, dear. I don't want to read off a script. I don't want to go back and look at notes, because the things that he was able to do in my life, in the lives of so many, have been transformational. We have all been part of the opportunity to create change. And, Andrew, I know that, you're not a man of accolades, a man that has ever presented the self-interest or wanting to people to acknowledge your accomplishments. But I personally want to say thank you for all the things you were able to do for many of us in all the trades. Construction trades, he has been able to partner up with a lot of apprenticeship programs that have transpired into opportunities for more than 2,000 apprentices beyond the construction trades. Andrew, you mean a lot to many of us, and I want to thank you for your devoted dedication to the labor movement. And thank you very much. And I want to introduce our very special honored guest, Andrew Cortez.
Freeze this thing. All right, I know we're in the House of Labor and we want to get to talking to our friends and neighbors because we are family, all right? So I will be brief. That doesn't mean I won't say a bunch of things, because I can speak very quickly, all right? Thank you, Alvin, for embarrassing me very properly. I appreciate it. I mean, Alvin is the reason I do the work. Justin is the reason I do the work. All of the graduates of Building Futures are the reason that we do the work. And what is the work? I mean, I'll tell you a little bit. Since apparently, mystery man, I don't say too much. I at least got to start saying hi to people, though. And apparently, Bob, we have to have a little showdown. I don't know, you play chess? What's going on? All right, so. Okay. So I come from labor. Labor's what lifted me out of poverty. I tried to get into my union at 16. They sent me away because I was too young. I was able to get in at 17, and it was the foundation of my career ever since. Yes, I am from California. That's why I say carpenter funny, right? It was my path. Registered apprenticeship was my path. You can apply yourself hard, creatively, learn things, demonstrate your skills, and get ahead. Your wage progresses. You have collective bargaining. You have rights on the job site. You have predictability in your career path. All of those things were the foundation of my career and lifted me out of poverty. It enabled me to come to Rhode Island with no fear that I would find work, because I have a nationally portable credential. When there's a union, I'm going to go to work. So I did when I moved to Rhode Island. I went to work. I went to work at the mall. I did lots of good carpentry work, but there came a point, very briefly, I promise, where there was a gap between my vocation and my values, and I was looking to figure out how to bridge that gap.
There's so much wrong with this world. Every one of us can see it when we look out the window, when we walk down the street, when we meet people, when we look at our society. And there has to be a way to change that. So first I went the union route, and I tried to become an instructor for my union. Thankfully for my future, I did not receive the letter saying come interview with the Carpenters Union. All right? I did get suckered onto being onto a hiring committee for Youth Build Providence. And they lured me into taking the job. Let me tell you the reason why. It was their philosophy. And I won't read out the whole philosophy for you, but just how it starts. As a community, we are engaged in a united struggle to overcome the social, political, economic, educational, and spiritual inequities that threaten to destroy us as people. And I said then, if you mean that, I'll work here. Because I come from the family of labor. I come from a community already. I know the power, because none of us get ahead by ourselves. All of us get ahead when we work together. So I come from a community of labor, and that just means it's a community organized around a particular occupation to fight for good benefits, pay, equal rights, etc. What about the community that's out there in the street, struggling with 30% unemployment, with senseless gun violence, with young people finding their ways into prisons instead of college? What about that? All right, so those two communities needed to be connected, right? The community that I see and the community that I know. And that's really the impetus for starting Building Futures. Youth Build's a beautiful program. I loved it. All right? But Building Futures could achieve scale. Building Futures, for those who don't know, works with the labor unions. If President Sabatoni did not become President Sabatoni in 2007, when we were launching Building Futures, I'm not sure it would have worked, because it's partnership with labor. It's this family extending to that family and connecting the dots in the middle. So we're a pre-apprenticeship program that works with low-income community residents, and we also try to change systems in construction to make sure that apprentices are being hired on the job and then connect our graduates to those opportunities. That's Building Futures. This is Building Futures, right at this table. I don't do this work alone. I'm standing up here because of the good work of the team and the community we built at Building Futures. Rick, Rachel, Michael, Casey, Marlo, another proud graduate, UA 51 member, Shelby. My wife is not a member of Building Futures, but thank you, Jen. Rita. And our honoree, and we have an honorary grandmother at Building Futures table tonight, right? So it's incredible work. 42% of our graduates were formerly incarcerated. 50% are justice involved, 100% low income, 35% of them extremely low income, 80% are people of color, 10% are women. But out of that 400, 3% recidivism. Baseline recidivism in this state is 47%. Just goes to show you, if there is a pathway to a good way to feed your family, people don't have to turn to other means. That's why we do this work. Without the power of organized labor, I couldn't have created Building Futures, because we bookend the system that's already in place. Labor knows how to take somebody who wants to work hard and get ahead in life, train them in an occupation, and give them a career path that has dignity and respect. All I had to do was bookend that system. That's it. But since then, we've expanded this model. If construction and its registered apprenticeship programs do so much for society, why aren't other sectors doing it? So in 2015, Alvin's exactly right. We pursued resources, we organized, we established an initiative called Apprenticeship Rhode Island to bring the apprenticeship model outside of the trades and extend these benefits to other people in need, other low-income families, other people who need a pathway where you can earn and learn at the same time. And we've done that through Casey's good work, through Rick's good work. We have 42 occupations that now have apprenticeship programs as a pathway to gain proficiency that have employed over 2,000, and that's probably a lowball number right now. 2,000 people in Rhode Island have now had a pathway to post-secondary education and a meaningful career as a result of the work of that team right there. So it's not me, really. It's not me. And I'm not going to get too much into my past out of respect for our friends from the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, all right? Just saying. But my life might have looked a little bit like a lot of our graduates. And I'll tell you what, now I hope my graduates' life look a little bit like mine. Because it's been a pathway to economic self-sufficiency, to feed my family, to always know that I have work, and to contribute to the movement that gave so much to me. The foundation of my career and everything that's come since is based on the fact that I'm a union carpenter. Don't get mad at me, Michael. All right? He often says I'm the only carpenter he likes. I'll take it, right? Here's the thing. Without this team, I mean, look at labor. Right? And no disrespect to all the other folks in labor that I've not met in this room, but the building trades are something special, all right? They are union because they provide such quality work to business owners who make money off of their labor, right? These employers are not union because they have to be, they're union by choice. It's an interesting model, and it's because we provide value, and that's what you do when you have a team like all of the labor folks. You heard about Joe Walsh, he's giving back over here. You heard about Michael Sabatoni, how he's rising through the ranks. Joe Vitullo running 271 now. There's no question that labor can provide the pathways for economic self-sufficiency for our communities in need. So all we're trying to do is marry these two communities. So, I said I'd be brief, and I promise I will be. And Rhode Island has a lot to learn from. Scott Malloy, I've learned a lot. From California, we really don't have a lot of deep history, given that we're a pretty young state, right? But I was pleased to know that it was Seth Luther, a carpenter in the Dorr Rebellion. You know, peaceably if we can, forcibly if we must, right? Right here in Rhode Island. But here's the thing. So Youth Builds Philosophy, and I didn't read you all the pledges those young adults had to scream out at the top of their lungs every day. But it ended with a really nice sentiment. All this we do with appreciation, love, dignity, and respect, and faith that the collective will of the community is the greatest force conceivable. I believe that then, I believe that now. Connect those dots between community and labor, and we have a winning formula for a decent society, and one that I'm interested in living in with all of you, my brothers and sisters. So thank you.
And I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm just going to say this, that United Food and Commercial Workers Local 328 is, has, and always will be an organizing local.
Thank you, Brother Riley. As Jimmy mentioned back at the beginning, the category of trailblazer is something we came up with during the dark Zoom era, when everyone you knew was a tiny box. And a couple of us on the board met regularly to talk about how to revamp what we do here every year. And we wanted to have different ways to honor people who weren't just, I've been in the labor movement for 30 years, which is awesome. And Trailblazer, I don't remember who came up with that, but we're using it as a way to mark people or organizations who are often new to organizing, to labor movement, and who took steps to make change very directly. In this case tonight, we're applying this term to the growing and successful pattern of workers organizing across the somewhat vague category of new economy in Rhode Island. High growth industries, often small scale and local, removed from the more traditional strongholds of manufacturing, trades, and teaching. Tonight, we're recognizing campaigns by bakers and then later baristas at the Seven Stars chain, with locations throughout Providence and in Cranston and Rumford. Also, the Savoy bookstore in Westerly, which sadly went out of business last month, but hey, we'll count the union as a win. I know, it's so sad. And also several sites in the statewide, again, emerging cannabis industry. It's really fitting that, and thanks for the intro to them in particular, Jimmy, that the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 328, an organizing union, is a crucial part of this effort. Formed by Rhode Island meat cutters in 1937, the UFCW has been central to the history, the larger history of Rhode Island labor, created, of course, during the New Deal, following on the massive national textile strike that included the Salesville Massacre, which we will be commemorating next week after next at Meshasik Cemetery, and then the passage of the Wagner Act. So that was a moment of the fervor of the generation's labor militancy and determination that hopefully we can still learn from. Today, Local 328 represents workers across Rhode Island and southeastern Mass, including, among a much longer list, bus drivers, medical staff, folks at Roger Williams University, and of course Stop and Shop supermarkets, whose successful strike in 2019 we recognized at a past banquet. They represent a growing number of workers in, again, these new economy sites, like the ones we're talking about today, each of whom formed new bargaining units over the last year and a half, 2 years. And so this recognition as trailblazers goes primarily, of course, to the workers who organize these unions. What do they have in common? Many of them, locally and nationwide, are occurring and organizing in sites of what one leading labor historian, it's my colleague and our member Eric Loomis, for those of you who know him, gotta throw that out, what he has called performatively liberal spaces, meaning industries, workplaces that are often viewed as progressive, especially by their customers, but where employees run up against the usual crap that is not progressive at all. And so demanding the protections and compensation due to them in these new industries is an important and exciting development in the larger national movement. Accepting this recognition on behalf of the larger group of organizers involved and the hardworking and determined members who form these new unions will be Dominic Pontarelli, Secretary-Treasurer of Local 328.
I want to start by saying that, Jim was a great organizer, but I very rarely ever listened to what he ever said. I worked for Jim for 19 years, and Jim was one hell of an organizer. First of all, Jim always had one great thing he said, was the 5 B's. Be brief, brother, be brief. And I will be brief. Organizing, what's that, Jim? You listened well. Organizers will we take pride in organizing at Local 328. Because if we don't organize, the labor movement dies. 7 Star, we organized them about a year and a half ago. And I can just tell you that they were the most united group that I ever seen. We organized 5 stores in Rhode Island. They were underpaid. They were paid $9 per hour, and most of the money they made were by tips. So the customers were paying their wages. Now, and they're part-timers. They had no benefits whatsoever. So that's all changed. They have they got great raises. They stood together, and they're proud to be UFCW Local 328 members. With that momentum, we went on to organize cannabis workers in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Nature's Medicine in Wareham, Massachusetts. GTI, Green Thumb. We won an election just a few weeks ago by 50-6. as what was said earlier, is that we've banded out in bus companies, nursing homes, and we just finished a contract, Durham Bus Company in Cumberland, Rhode Island. The first time we did the first contract, we had 3 elections there, 2 decert elections. We pushed them back. So when a company wants to fight and they want to use national right to work, they're going to get a fight from Local 328. And I'd like to thank also our organized staff. Everybody that's sitting at this table right here, including myself, organized for this local. By closing, I also want to thank Miguel Santos, who's Director of Organizing presently. He's on vacation. And Jamie Prego, who is our organizer that worked on a campaign that we had up at Cargo, up in North Kingston. That's the company that's packaging meat and putting it in the Stop and Shops. There's no meat cutters at Stop and Shops anymore. That meat is processed at Cargo up there. We lost an election there, and we will be back in a few months. We're keeping track with those people, and we're going to have a second chance with them, and we're going to beat them, and we're going to win. And we're going to have that meat again being unionized meat packing again. Lastly, I'd like to thank the members who organized. If anybody worked on an organizing campaign, it is the hardest thing to sign a card. It's the hardest thing. That's a commitment that you make. You're exposing yourself to your employer, and you got to put your job on the line. And those people, they deserve a good contract, they deserve what they get, and they deserve the benefits that they earned. So I'd like to thank them. Thank you very much.
That's all great stuff. Tim, the president, couldn't be here, but great job, Brother Pontarelli. Mark Shanley will make our final presentation this evening. Mark is a recording secretary of IBEW Local 99 and has been on the Rhode Island Labor History Society Executive Board for several years. He's going to talk, and hold your applause too, regarding the DHL strikers, Teamsters, Local Tuesday night. But I remember at the end of that strike, and I just love this quote. This was from Tiffany Thompson, a driver for Northeastern Transportation Services and a proud member of Local 251, who said this when the strike was settled. Solidarity is at an all-time high after a long fight like this. When Teamsters stand united, anything is possible. I want her on the Labor History Society. Who knows? Come on, you guys. Get a hold. Come on up.
All right, brothers and sisters, let's keep this moving. Before we start first, we really have had a great program tonight. I know we're all proud to be here. We've had great honorees. I'm disappointed our president and spiritual leader, Jim Parisi, could not be here. However, I have to add, he has not submitted photographic evidence of his COVID test to the RILHS board with his face right beside it. And until he does, that is an unexcused absence that will be made up later this semester. So, as we just heard from Miriam, the Rhode Island Labor History Society's Trailblazer Award is meant to honor those in the movement who are pushing the boundaries and traditions of the labor movement, those representing the new blood and the new energy in our struggle. In short, those in the movement who are actually fucking moving, right? Now, don't tell my friends in '99, but one of my first experiences with the Rhode Island labor movement was in Local 251. And we can jump into the Wayback Machine and remember a much younger Mark Shanley walking up to the guard shack at 150 Plan Way and meeting another brother out at dusk in front of the twilight shift in the wind, leafleting for his slate to be elected to the Teamsters. Now, That is pretty emblematic of the labor movement, right? A lonely man out at dusk in the wind, passing out leaflets. But don't focus on the papers that are all scattered across the 4 points of the compass. Focus on that perseverance, because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. In June 22nd, 2022, the Teamsters, the local 251 chapter at Northeast Transportation Services walked out on strike, and they did not walk back on the job for 7 months. They persevered. They persevered. They went through confrontations with scab subcontractors who were paid in cash, if you can believe that, and I'm sure we can. Maybe that's how Northeast Transportation operates in South Carolina, but times down there are changing as well. Our sisters and brothers' success in Pawtucket is a beacon to every other rat shop in the logistic contractor model, from DHL all the way to Amazon. And they're probably listening through the phones right now, but they need to hear it as well. They persevered through confrontations with the police, suffering no small amount of cut rate brutality and pepper spray to victory. That in itself is not a new story. We can remember Big Bill Haywood himself said about a strike, when working people put their hands in the pockets, they got the boss's beat. We won't talk about where Big Bill's glowering glass eye and ashes actually found their final resting place. But Bill himself might not even recognize the working class that went on strike in Pawtucket in 2022. It has been said many times of our union movements, too male, too pale, and too stale. Come on down to Rhode Island Labor History Society board meeting some night if you want to talk about age, all right? Some of our guys can't even remember the whole roster of who's supposed to be there. But the Teamsters who struck at 251 are not that. Their Chapter 251 is a young one, born in another strike 5 years ago, and its membership reflects the true face of the labor movement, of the working class. Men, women, young and old, people of color, working people, all of them together fighting to win. Check out any picture of that strike. You will not see a pale, male, stale crowd in front of there. The issues that they were fighting for were familiar ones, what we sometimes casually refer to as the economic package. And that's adequate language, but we can sometimes find the details somewhat obscured in there. Healthcare unaffordable for the workers, non-existent retirement contributions, wages insufficient for the dignity or even the survival of the workers who actually created that wealth. Brothers and sisters, today those workers have an honorable contract. That oldest tool of unionism, to put our hands in our pockets, except in justified self-defense, sees its most latest, most diverse application in the Teamsters strike at the Northeast Transportation Services. In Pawtucket, one of the oldest industrial mill towns in New England. From the Salesville strike and massacre over 2 centuries ago to the Teamsters today, the goal has always been the same. The story of our movement is told in the recognition of the changing face of that working class, their changing needs, still struggling the same. The tools get newer. We have labor vision now to spread the word. We have geofencing, and we have stop work orders from the DLT, and I'm sure we would have loved to have those 200 years ago, right? So I hear that we might even have air conditioning in some of the trucks at UPS now in 2022. That's awesome. But always it's the same point, solidarity and the advancement of the working class. So you're not here to hear me talk, we're here to recognize our brothers and sisters. So please join me in welcoming to the stage to accept award on behalf of all those who struggled those long months, 24/7, on Concord Street in Pawtucket, the stewards from Teamsters Local 251, the Northeast Transportation Service Chapter, Toby, Amber, and Chris.
Watch out for the footlight with your foot. Okay, just that. You don't have this in the way, do you? Come
this way. Just take a few steps this way. Okay, that's good. Absolutely. Hello. So, I've only ever spoken in public once. And so when Matt told me I was going to have to say a couple of words, well, my first thought was crap. But the only time that I'd had was at my father's funeral. So I'm just going to go back to there. My father was an electrician for my entire life. He was a hardworking man who believed that hard work deserved rewards. When I was a teenager, he used to go out if we got in trouble, and me and my brothers, we got in trouble. He'd bring us to the backyard, and there were large stumps in our backyard. And he would inform us that here's a shovel, here's an axe, dig that stump out of the ground, and like cut out the roots, get the whole thing out of there. When you're done with that, you're done with your grounding. If you got it done in 4 hours, you're grounded for 4 hours. If you got it done in 4 months, you had a long month. He believed that if you worked hard, you deserved a reward. And the harder you worked, the bigger the reward. My father passed away in 2018 during the first strike. I say the first strike because it's insane. In the past 5 years, DHL has been on strike withdrawing their labor for a total of 9 months. The first time we did it was because we needed to get our foot in the door just to be heard. People were making enough money to not pay their bills. They're making enough money to have to be on welfare for food, for health care. There was no reward. This is not a reward. We got in, since the beginning of this, we've gone from $12 an hour to $21 an hour. We walked out after about 5 months of negotiating. We started negotiating in February. As the gentleman said, in June we left. And it's hard. Your payroll goes down. There's nothing there. The union takes care of you, but it's not enough. It's long hours. It's coming in at stupidly early. And when I say stupidly early, if you can't get an Egg McMuffin and a coffee on your way to the strike line, it's too damn early. It's confronting people that are supposed to be your workers. They're supposed to be taking care of you. Management do not take care of you. They're supposed to. They don't listen to you. They prepared for us to walk out because they knew we're not giving you guys this. But they also were not expecting us to stand our ground. I heard from more than one of them that they weren't expecting us to last for a month. Then they weren't expecting us to last for 3 months. Then we got into fall and they're like, they're not going to make it to Thanksgiving. It wasn't until January that we went back to work. The sacrifices that some of these people made is insane. The people wanted what they deserved. They wanted their reward for the hard work that they did. I know people in this room that lost apartments, vehicles, that have bills that are so far beyond what that are still paying it back right now. I don't know whether or not everybody agrees that it was worth it. You'd have to ask individuals. But me, I went from $12 an hour in 2018 to making almost $21 an hour. I have 4 weeks vacation now. I have affordable health care that I don't have to go through the state for. 9 paid holidays, and respect. And you people have no idea how much this means to me, to all of us, I'm sure. I want to thank Matt, and Tommy, and my wife for everything that they've helped us with.
Everybody up! Alexis Santoro, are you here? We have the results from the 50-50 raffle. Just a couple of things as we wrap up here. Reminded that the annual Labor Day address will be Monday, September 4th at Meshasik Cemetery. And we've got a real rock star. Every year we have a guest speaker at this event. And we've got Joe Walsh, not Joe Walsh from the Eagles, Joe Walsh from local IBW Local 99. And we're looking forward to that. And don't forget, the Museum of Work and Culture is open all day on Labor Day, courtesy of a grant from the Rhode Island Labor History Society. And there will be a special screen. Well, that's sold out. But we're going to have an opportunity. We're going to get a hold of that and have a special showing, I think, for the union members. Okay, let's see. What do we got here?
So we've raised $750. $75 from the winner.
Oh, no, wait, it might be somebody who bought a ticket and isn't here.
Well, we didn't keep names. They had
Okay, go ahead, I don't care. I'm going to call up the other rock star in the room, Justin Kelly.
All right, so I got one thing to tell you about this song here, and that is, it's kind of about what everything we do here. You gotta believe it. So as Utah Phillips said, this is the we are. So go ahead, stand up. Let's sing Solidarity.
All right.
You know the tune, you know the tune. Teach it to us. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no better power anywhere beneath the sun. If what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never thought to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their heart in power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. One more time. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarding gold, greater than the might of armies magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to earth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
For the union makes us strong. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next year. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments.